jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, I love Christmas. I love everything about Christmas, including wearing a ridiculous crown of candles, red clothing. The whole thing is amazing. Christmas is a ritual that's spread far and wide, from its origins as an amalgamation of a Christian ritual that adopted Saturnalia from the Romans and Yule from the Norse and a whole slew of other traditions in between it, and became a ritual that is shared by everyone who comes from a culturally Christian background. And it is fascinating that Christmas, with all these amalgamated rituals, has survived through secularization, through the inclusion of other faiths, through becoming a more cultural ritual. But why does that matter to you, the fantasy world builder? After all, you're not going to have Christmas in your world per se, now are you? Well, no. But rituals like Christmas is really important in cultural world building. Rituals build a sense of community. They build connections between people. And without rituals, the sense of community begins to fade and the cultural bonds weakens. And that is very interesting from a cultural world building perspective. So join me as we talk about the philosophy behind rituals and how they can contribute to both your story, your themes, and your world. Welcome to another episode from Just in Time Worlds with your host, Marie Mullaney. Okay, let's get going with what rituals are, just to make sure we're all on the same page regarding what we're talking about. At their core, rituals are symbolic and communal actions that connect people to each other, to their world, and even to the ideas that are bigger than any one individual. They are practices that go beyond practical needs or everyday routines. They're moments we set aside as special. Think of them as the glue that binds a community and its values. Now, you have a few kinds of rituals. One example is seasonal festivals. Almost every culture, whether ancient or modern, has some kind of festival tied to the changing of seasons. It could be a spring festival like Japan's Hanami festival, the famed cherry blossom festival. It could be a midwinter feast or something as iconic as Halloween. These celebrations don't just mark time, they give people a reason to gather, to celebrate, to remind themselves and each other of shared experiences and beliefs. And if you're interested in my thoughts on creating the food types for such a festival, check out my video on that topic in the information card. Another example of rituals are rites of passage, those big life marker moments. Birth ceremonies, coming of age rituals, weddings, funerals. All of these events provide ways for the community to celebrate their own. Either you're celebrating someone transitioning to adulthood, or the love of two people, or the life of someone who has left the community, or the survival of someone for another year. These kinds of rituals make people feel at home and loved in their culture, like there's a place for them in the grand scheme of things. Religious ceremonies are another type of ritual. You see these across cultures, whether it's a weekly service, a prayer at specific times of the day, an annual festival like Passover or Ramadan or Diwali, or even once-in-a-lifetime rituals like a pilgrimage undertaken to a place held as holy by a religion. These rituals are built to focus a community's collective attention on shared beliefs, to remind everyone that they're part of a tradition, And importantly, they give individuals a sense of connection, not just to their community, but to the divine or to something sacred beyond themselves. In all of these examples, there's a pattern. Rituals make people feel rooted in something. They make ordinary events feel significant, creating this shared sense of meaning that helps people feel at home in their world. It's a kind of belonging that goes beyond simple association. It's a deeper, almost unspoken understanding that ties people together. So, ritual is important, and I've done various videos on these kinds of festivals and rituals, which I will link in the information cards. But there is a deeper meaning that I want to plunge into here, which is the effect on a culture when those ritual bonds start weakening and what that means for the culture. This has a profound impact on culture, and understanding ritual bonds is something that I think is important to every world builder. So, let's move on from what rituals are to what happens when they fade. So first, I need to give a shout out to Unsolicited Advice, which is a great philosophy channel on YouTube. If you're interested in philosophy, absolutely check out his work. It is fantastic. I will link the channel below. He did a video recently on a philosopher named Byung-Chul, who wrote about rituals and modern society and why we feel so disconnected from each other, so lonely. This inspired me to read Byung-Chul book, and I got quite a lot of insight from it. So let's talk about rituals fading. In The Disappearance of Rituals, a topology of the present, Han explores how the gradual erosion of rituals has led to this profound sense of societal alienation and the loss of community cohesion. Han sees rituals as essential symbolic acts that provide structure, continuity, and a sense of belonging, anchoring individuals within a collective identity. Han compares ritual loss to cultural homelessness, an idea that society loses meaning when these collective practices dissolve. He argues that without these shared practices, society has shifted towards what he calls communication without community, a state where individual expression flourishes, but genuine social bonds decay. Central to Han's critique is the idea that modern neoliberal values prioritize efficiency, production, and self-promotion over community building and meaningful social practices. It's important to note that Han critiques not just the absence of rituals, but the prioritization of productivity and self-interest over community, which often suppresses communal values. In Han's view, rituals foster community by transcending individual egos. And actually, the sillier the actions that you take in the ritual, the more bonding and experience it is. Since everyone participating is setting aside their ego to participate in the ritual, whether that means wearing a funny hat or whether it means doing some strange dances. But in modern society, rituals are sidelined by an economy that promotes self-optimization, productivity, and emotional commodification. I gotta tell you that emotional commodification is a $10 concept if I ever heard one. Basically, it's when feelings and emotions get packaged up and sold to us as a product. Han discusses emotional modification as part of a symptom of how individualism and consumerism have transformed genuine emotions into engagement-driven data. I had an economics professor that would have loved Han. Good old Saint-Peter Blanche, she used to say, "It is the consumerization of our society." His lectures were something out of this world. Anyway, Companies and social media constantly encourage us to share everything. Our birthdays, our life events, the promotion that you got at work, everything. But they're not connecting you with your friends, not really. What they're doing is they are turning your emotions, your shared emotions with your community, into a commodity that drives engagement on their platform and allows them to make more money. You're not just buying a pair of sneakers, you're buying confidence or empowerment. A fancy coffee machine? That is actually giving you a cozy and fulfilling morning. I mean, come on. It's a coffee machine. You hit the button, liquid nectar comes out, and that's all you need from it. But no, you need to buy the experience. This all results in a society that basically values individual branding and consumption over community bonds, over actual emotional connection to other people. It fosters what Hahn called a narcissistic culture in which people interact mainly within their ideological echo chambers. Hey, and speaking of emotions, could you hit that thumbs up button? Look, I didn't make the world. I'm just trying to live here, and I need you to hit that thumbs up button so the engagement algorithm pushes you out to other people and we can make our connections within this community. Thumbs up? Hahn also critiques how rituals imbue time with meaning, differentiating between ritualized time, which gives depth and continuity, and the fleeting, disconnected nature of contemporary digital life. Without rituals, time becomes a series of isolated moments devoid of narrative, making life feel shallow and disjointed. He argues that this lack of temporal structure contributes to modern existential dissatisfaction, as the constant push for productivity leaves no room for the reflective or sacred pauses that rituals once provided. In essence, Hahn believes that rituals counteract the temporal fragmentation of the digital culture by providing cohesive, meaningful time structures. Basically, we used to be able to switch off during rituals or to think and meditate on deep things, and now we're not. We're no longer engaging in those shared moments of identity, and so we've lost the time to go into deep thought. Hahn's work doesn't simply mourn the loss of ritual, but suggests that this absence leads to a deeper cultural homelessness. He believes that bringing back communal rituals, even if not in their traditional forms, could help counterbalance the isolating forces of modern life and bring individuals closer to a shared sense of purpose. I should note that Hahn encourages exploring new communal forms of ritual. He's not advocating for turning back the clock, but instead is arguing that we should find new rituals that work in our dynamically altered landscape and build our communities. Hahn believes that such new rituals could restore meaning and resilience in an increasingly fragmented society. Okay, so that's a lot of words about Hahn's work, but this isn't the Philosophy Channel. So, what does all this mean for you, the world builder and fantasy storyteller? If we assume Hahn has a point, and while I may not agree with everything he says, I do think he's onto something about rituals being essential for building strong cultures, then rituals clearly create a meaningful sense of connection among a culture's members. For us as world builders, if we accept that, it opens up a few paths for designing cultures in our stories. You have a kind of sliding scale here. At one end, you have cultures rich with rituals, which emphasize community and connection. And at the other, you have cultures that prioritize individualism and personal productivity, where rituals are minimal or absent. So, if you want to create a world with strong cultural bonds, where characters feel a sense of strength and belonging, you'll want to build a culture that's deeply ritualized. This could include daily, weekly, or yearly rituals, or even once-in-a-lifetime ceremonies. Layering these kinds of rituals creates depth and a tightly woven society. This approach also opens up some interesting thematic options. For example, you might explore a character from a highly ritualized culture, someone whose beliefs and values come straight from these strong cultural bonds. This character could have morally questionable views that they've internalized from their culture, showing how these intense ritual bonds can suppress individual moral judgment and empathy in favor of collective beliefs. This can be portrayed negatively as a suppression of individual empathy. Or you can flip this and show a character who leaves their culture and encounters new perspectives that challenges their own beliefs. The character could feel their morality and values and empathy questioned, and yet they could draw strength from their familiar rituals of their culture, choosing to stay true to their values and practices, even when far from home, showing it as a positive. In either case, you're using ritual as a powerful tool for character development and cultural identity. Conversely, you could create a culture with weak connections where rituals have fallen away. It might resemble our modern societies where individualism has taken center stage, and without those shared rituals, the sense of community has shattered. This kind of culture could face threats, not necessarily physical, but perhaps something like cultural colonization, where a stronger, more unified culture is being exported to them. They might try to resist this influence, but without their own cultural rituals to fall back on, they lack the unity and cohesion to push back effectively. Or you could have a culture that's actively disintegrating with subcultures forming as identity groups, creating their own small private rituals. This would allow you to show how fractured societies struggle to maintain cohesion, maybe through a character who clings to past rituals, or a character who envisions a future where loosely connected, fragmented cultures are just as valid as the strong, unified culture that once existed. Remember, this is fantasy. There's no single right or wrong way to build a culture. Instead, it's about choosing what best serves your story. If you want a strong culture with tight bonds, incorporate frequent, meaningful rituals. But if you're building a culture where people feel disconnected, downplay rituals or show them as shallow routines, performances where the original meaning has been lost. This emptiness can impact how your characters feel about belonging and their cultural identity, making it a powerful tool in your world building. This has been a bit of an unusual video. I don't usually dive this deep into philosophy, but I do feel like Han's ideas on ritual are worth considering when you're writing or building fantasy worlds. Culture is one of the most essential aspects we create as world builders, and I've read so many books where cultures feel thin because they lack ritual. And I think that's partly because in our modern world, ritual isn't as central anymore. And it's easy to forget when we're building worlds since it's not something we experience so much in our daily lives. But it is worth remembering. Strong rituals likely lead to strong cultural bonds, and a lack of ritual can leave people feeling disconnected or even alienated from their own culture. So as you build your worlds, think about what role rituals or their absence might play in the society you're creating. I hope you've enjoyed this deeper dive. If you like this style of video or found it helpful, hit the thumbs up button or leave a comment to let me know your thoughts. If you're interested in financially supporting the channel, please do check out my books. I have an epic fantasy series, Sangwheel Chronicles. I have a science fantasy series, and I have a spicy novella series in a fairy world, and you can find all of them on the links down below. If you're hungry for more world building, check out my video on creating cultural norms for a fantasy world, or whatever the algorithm is suggesting to you right now. And I will see you soon for another video from Just in Time Worlds, where we build what we need, when we need it. And a very Merry Christmas.